Do you have a piece of fabric you have tucked away waiting for just the right quilt pattern? Do you pull it out every once in a while and look at it just to fold it back up and put it back again? Are you ready to use that piece of fabric? Right now, this could be that quilt. I have had so much fun with this particular quilt pattern. Just look behind me. I've made 3 quilts in just a matter of a couple weeks out of this same pattern. The first one is the pretty white tone on tone, a wedding quilt, and it turned out fabulous. It looks so elegant and beautiful. And then I went wild with some crazy bright colors across the spectrum, and they look wonderful together, and it just makes such a fantastic pattern design, and I love how the quilt looks. But the one in the middle, that's the special one just for me. That peachy floral in the larger blocks on that pattern, that's the fabric I've been hanging on to for a couple years. And then I found just the right low volume fabrics to go with it. And then the aqua, the contrast came about. And the next thing I knew, I had a quilt ready to go. And this went together really, really quick. I'm Leah Louise from Inspired Quilting by Leah Louise, and I am anxious to show you how to make this quilt. It's a disappearing 9 patch, which means it's an easy quilt. And the layout, once we cut our 9 patch into quadrants, into 4s, we make a 4 patch and repeat that with all of our blocks, and we've got this wonderful quilt. It's made with 20 blocks, which means this quilt will require 1 charm pack of your focal fabric, 1 charm pack of your low volume or your background, and 20 individual contrast blocks, all of them at 5 inches. And then we just put it together with a disappearing 9 patch, and it's the layout of this that makes it, I think, so spectacular. So let's take a look at this. Let's see what we have. I can't wait for you to take a look and watch how this quilt goes together, and I hope you're going to want to make your own. So let's get started. But first, don't forget, please subscribe. Let's start talking about color. So for example, on this quilt, we are making, let's see right here, the disappearing 9 patch block. And we're cutting our 9 patch, we're creating a 4 patch, and this is what the block is going to look like. So there's 3 components. We need 4 5-inch squares in our focal fabric, and then we need 4 more that are going to be in our background, and then only 1 of our bright contrast piece. So with that, we need 3 different fabrics. As I said, this is my primary piece. This is the focal. This is what is going to be dominant in the quilt. And then I saw this, and this is just the sweetest little print. But the fact that there's this aqua in here, sort of a turquoise tealy color, I thought, what a great contrast then to use this, because that really stands out. So I sat on this for a while, and I thought, what am I going to do for the low volume? My common go-to is something like this on this particular block, more of a white or a cream, and they have gray or beige prints on there. And I thought, all right, that's okay, but this is a more earthy color. And this background is a bit on the creamy side. So I didn't want to get into grays. I didn't want to use a white. And then I found what I wanted. The difficult part was deciding which ones to use. This is a fabric that came out probably a year or so ago. And it's by Art Gallery Fabrics. So I bought all these. And then these are some others that I pulled in. And I just thought these colors worked so well. But I only need 7 fat quarters for my background. So I don't want to overdo it. And I thought I'm definitely going to take out these dark ones, because I don't want too dark a background. This is the background I want to be more of a highlight and a brightener than to tone it down too far. So I thought, no, I don't want to do that, because there's enough small little things here that this can contrast and detract from. I don't want my background to steal the show from my focal fabric. So I took that out, and I had these 2, and I really like them. The decision that helped me really determine which way I was going is the background color. This carries a lot of color. And while they're beautiful and they match really well, it's going to be a little too monochromatic. And I want these florals to really stand out. But look at this. See this background? It's even a little brighter than what's here. And I like that a lot. And the color in these patterns, they're graphic, they're somewhat organic, they're going to match well. And I thought, no, I want to go with this creamy color. So this is my seven fat quarters. In making this quilt, the lap size that I'm demonstrating specifically with this fabric requires 7 fat quarters of this fabric, which is about 1.75 yards, 7 fat quarters of your background, and then all we need are, let's see, it's 25-inch squares. That's going to work out really well. So I have my colors selected. This is what I'm going to go with. And now I'm ready to cut my quilt. I do have a video. If you've not cut your 5-inch squares, commonly known as charm squares, if you've not cut them before out of fat quarters, then watch that video, because I'm going to show you how to get the most fabric, the most 5-inch squares in particularly, out of these pieces so that you can use your fabric efficiently. Now, what I do, because I'm not going to need all the 5-inch squares that I can get out of each fat quarter, I'm going to go ahead and cut them into the charms, into the 5-inch, because I use a lot of those. And it's nice to have a stack of ready-to-go pieces when I'm just looking for something real quick. These fabrics look wonderful together. They're going to make a gorgeous quilt. The focals are really nice. I like how they bring out that strong peach color in the flowers itself. And these backgrounds just really recede nicely. There's enough little bit in there to add some interest without a lot of contrast or competition between these. It allows these to go to the back and these to stand forward. And then these are just adorable. I love how this is going to come together. And this is going to be so pretty throughout the quilt. Now, one thing I do is I chain piece all my patches together, all my 9 patches. So we're going to sew a row together. We'll sew each of these 3 rows at once, chain stitching as we go, and then we're going to sew them all at one time. One thing I do want to show you here on this particular print, see how it looks a bit like a vine? Now, each of these in the background are going to be cut this direction. And this won't really matter, but on this one, because it's slightly directional, if I cut it this way, it'll be fine. But if I turn it this way and cut it, then I'm going to get a little bit more of a vine look to it. And I like that. This is a botanical. There's a lot of plants, flowers, etc. And I think that'll really look good. So sometimes when you have a slightly directional fabric, it can be fun to play with as you're putting your blocks together. So this is step 1. Lay it out. Take a look at what you're going to do. Then we're going to, as I said, make rows. And we are going to sew, there we go, 3 rows of 3 blocks. So we start with this one, put 2 together, and we do that. Let's do it this way. There's a lot to look at here. And we sew this all the way down, and then we add the 3rd block so that we have our 9 patch. But we still have this seam here. Now, when we've got these finished, we want to give them a press. Now, I finger press as I sew. Alternatively, you can go ahead and press them with the machine, or excuse me, with your iron. You want these seams to go out towards the focal fabric and this seam to come in towards your contrast. That way you're going to have nice nesting seams and you'll get a good flat block where those joints come together. So now we want to sew across here, and in order to do that, we're going to put 2 together. So these are pressed nice and flat. I used a finger press as I went, and sew these here, nesting those seams well. And then I don't press them open at this point. I'll give it a quick press just to set those seams, and then I'll come in and do the other one, and then you can set that, and then when you're ready to finish them all at the end and press them all together, I press those seams outward. Here's an example here. So I press all these seams to the outside. So the center, we press towards the contrast. On these outer edges, we press towards the focal, and this seam here also presses towards the focal. You can do it either way on this particular, on these two seams, but I just, for consistency, I don't have to stop and think about which way am I sewing it. But you do want to keep them all in the same direction. It's going to make putting your quilt together much simpler. But look, I have a few of these finished. I don't think I'm even halfway there yet, because I need a total of 20 blocks. This one hasn't been ironed yet, so you can see how it looks before it gets pressed. And then once you press them, oh, that one hasn't either, but once you press them, you get nice flat seams. And these corners are coming together great. So as long as you keep your seam allowance consistently at 1/4 inch and nest those seams, you're going to be in great shape. So let's keep moving on. I've got more blocks to make. I'll get the rest of these finished, and then I'll show you the next step, because we are going to go from this 9 patch. We'll cut it into quadrants, into quarters, and then that's where we're going to make the final block for this quilt, and you're going to love it. It is gorgeous. I love how it lays out. So let's get going. I've got some more sewing to do, some pressing, and we'll get this finished. Here are the 9 patch blocks all sewn together. There's a total of 20, and they're all the same except that these little background blocks switch up between. I think I had 5 different fabrics that I used. So in a couple places, some of them are, relatively close together, but they're background and they're not going to be that dominant or prominent to see. The next step, now that we have these beautiful 9 patches, which just by themselves, they would make a pretty quilt. You could do something like this and have blocks that connect. But what we're going to do is create what's called the disappearing 9 patch. And it's really a fun pattern, and once you do the initial cutting, there are a number of different ways you can lay this quilt out, but I have a favorite way that I'm going to show you, and that's where we're heading today. So the first thing, these are 5-inch squares. We sew a 1/4 inch on each side, so they finish at 4.5. I need to cut this down the middle on both directions. That means I need to have 2 1/4 on each side of my cut. Now, rather than put it between the grid marks and rely on that as being my center, because my seam allowances aren't perfect, but if this block is incredibly accurate, everything else is going to look great. I can be off out here a little bit, and that's easy to manage. But if this block isn't square and at that number, then I'm going to run into some trouble. So I double measure. I put my cutting ruler right there, and I do it at 2 1/4. See where that 1/4 inch mark is right on the fabric line where the seam is sewn? And then I just take a second ruler and I make sure I have 2 1/4. Every once in a while, I'll come up a little more or less, but this way I'm sure that I'm getting right down the center and I'm not going to waver and have anything different along the way. Now, it is best to stand up. I was sitting down, sorry. I was just sort of taking a break there. But here we go. So see, here we have our 2 1/4 on both sides. And there we go. And then we set our blocks and we go to the next one. Now, I don't stack these to cut them because you really do need the accuracy. And once these are sewn, there's a little bit of variance between each one simply because that we're human and that's what happens. We don't have exact measures. That one's a little wonky. So let's see, we have 2 1/4 and 2 1/4. Everything looks wonderful. So I cut each block individually. It takes a little more time, but the accuracy is more important to me because I'd rather spend the time now while I can and I have control than later when I'm trying to make things fit that don't want to go together. So that's my preference. So you obviously have your favorite ways and what works for you, and you know where your confidence lies, and absolutely do what works best for you. The idea is that we make this block in such a way that it's going to fit together and look wonderful. And wait till you see how we're going to rearrange these blocks. That's the secret. That really is what makes this such a beautiful, beautiful pattern. Okay, so I needed to get 4 of them cut. Actually, only 3 because I have a 4th one sewn. Just tuck those over here. Now, this is one block. This is the one we just cut. And if you watched the previous video, you saw what I called sort of a square dance, for lack of a better word. But you know when you do the square dancing and somebody calls out so many steps this way and that way, that's just what I thought of with this block. Because we have 4 blocks and we're going to go around the square. This block remains the same, and we start with 1 turn to the right, 1 step around. The next block takes 2 steps, 1 and 2, and the third block takes 3 steps, 1, 2, and 3. And when they're all sewn together, this is what your finished block will look like. Now, what I want you to see is how it looks when we have multiple blocks put together. So let's put this one back. We've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this one goes 1 and 2 and 3. So this one will go here and here. We're kind of going off the screen, but I want you to get a feel for what this is going to look like. So we'll come and do this the same way. So this is going to go once, this will go twice, and this goes 3 times, putting it over here. So what I love about this are the diagonal lines. I think they're just beautiful, and these colors work so well together. That turquoise, that aqua in the background is just so pretty and picks up on the blues inside each of these blocks. The background is just perfect. It's enough little bit of color in there to bring out these sort of peachy tones without being too strong and dominant. But the flowers, I love how these blooms just pop out and look gorgeous. And that's why I bought the fabric, because I loved these flowers. I just thought the design was beautiful. And this is a perfect way to showcase a fabric like that that you really love. So the next step, we're going to cut them all and put them together in this manner and chain stitch. So the way I do that is I'll first take these 2, I'll put block 1 here, block 2 on top, sew it together. Then we'll say this is block 3 and block 4, sew it together. And then once these are sewn, I'm going to press them opposing and then sew my seam together. What I do in order to get all of these pressed the same way, because your seams are going to be nesting with these large blocks, and they're going to come side by side, and if you press everything the same direction, you're going to have a little bit of difficulty getting those seams to nest. So what I found worked best is I looked at where I was here in this center, and I finger pressed my seams. Once I sewed this down and I finger pressed it towards the rectangle. I sewed this one down and I finger pressed it towards this rectangle. So that way, when I sewed these together, every pair were sewn the same way on all 20 blocks. And then once I sewed this final seam, I set the seam, but I didn't press it until last, because that's the seam that's going to flip back and forth depending on where it falls within the quilt. It probably sounds like a lot more work than it really is, but it's just something to keep in mind, that if you're consistent about the way you press your blocks and make each one the same, it really does make it all go together much easier in the end. So the first step we have now, we have our 20 finished sewn blocks. Going to cut them into quadrants. We're going to rearrange them into our 4-step block here and make a 4-patch. And then the quilt goes together easily. We have 20 blocks and they're all in a 4-patch. So we're going to do, what do we have? 4 by 5 is the way I'll set it up. And it's going to make a great size quilt. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to get my blocks finished. If you're working on one, go ahead and see what you can pull together, and then let's see where we are. I'll show you that final assembly step that's going to put it all together into a beautiful quilt top. Before I get all my blocks sewn together, I wanted to show you a couple other layouts. One of the most common is this one, where you take opposing corners and turn them to the outside. So you have this little cluster here of 2 large and 2 small squares, and it creates a diagonal in both directions. And it's very attractive. It's probably one of the first disappearing 9 patches that I remember seeing. Now, if you look at this, we just turn these down, and you just kind of have some stacking rows. And if these are in different colors, that can be kind of fun and create some different colorways. Have these be dark and these lighter, and maybe those be some prints. There is one other one that I think is kind of interesting. Let's see, this one goes this way, and I think this goes this way, because what we're trying to do is create a cross, a plus in the center. And so this is another one. So play with your blocks a little bit. You may find something that appeals to you more than the one that I've selected, but this just happens to be my absolute favorite. I really like how this lays out, and I particularly really love the whole look of the quilt done in this block. Okay, now it's time to go sew. Fun playing with all the blocks and layouts and patterns. That's done with for now. Get serious, get these sewn, and I'll show you what we have. And here's our finished quilt. And I knew I was going to love all these little aqua confetti blocks that are scattered throughout. It's in a diagonal pattern alongside the large sort of tumbling squares that we have coming through here. And it looks wonderful. And it's fun. Some of the squares have a large flower and others have a little dragonfly. There's butterflies and paisleys and pretty organic bits of things, and the background just looks wonderful. It just does exactly what we want it to kind of recede to the back. It brightens up the quilt. The little peachy colors in there just help enhance the flowers that we have going, and I think it all works really well together. I just sort of like looking at how it falls and folds around, and look at these pretty, pretty prints. I think it came out gorgeous. I'm really, really happy with it. I hope you have an opportunity to give this pattern a try sometime, because it is really fun and turns out so, so well. Just look at all those colors. Love it. Thank you. So glad you're here. It was fun sharing this with you. Don't forget, please subscribe. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I appreciate you being here very, very much.